What's up guys, how's it going? Aussie Reefer Anton here. Back with a long-awaited video of mixing up my calcium, magnesium and alkalinity bulk batch buckets that come from Coralessentials. I don't know if you follow my Instagram, but I received these 3 buckets here probably around mid-August. That was also the time we sort of bought a house, and I haven't had a chance to mix them up yet, and I'm actually running completely low on my alkalinity, so that's in desperate need of top up. As you can see, the reef tank's doing good. Yeah, nothing to really update on. The corals that I did get in the last video, they unfortunately did melt. I think it was just due to breaking down so many times, the car overheating, and then I think the corals have also overheated in the process as well. That's unfortunate, but what can you do? That's just reefing, I guess. So I hope you've had a good week with your reef tank. Mine hasn't been as good, but it's only looking good. But I'd, do this video, finally. So I've got 3 buckets here. I've got all the supplements, the amino acids and trace elements that I need to add to the 3 supplements. Coralessentials were nice enough and they gave me some CVE premix. I don't know if you can see that. They also given me the Coralessentials Power Grow. Got that as well. And the Amino Ready as well. So these 3, they don't go in the buckets, they're just to use, ready to use sort of thing. But everything else in here is ready to get mixed up. Already filled these 10 litre jugs with about 80% RODI water, which Coralessentials recommend to fill at 80%, because you don't want to fill it with 10 litres completely, because you have to then mix in your crystals of magnesium, crystals of calcium, all that stuff. If you want to get scientific, they are calcium chloride powder, ready to mix. And I've got the Coralessentials magnesium up, which is magnesium chloride and magnesium sulfate powder, ready to mix. And also the sodium carbonate powder, ready to mix with RO as well. So all of these 3 get mixed with RODI water, and then that's what gets dosed into your tank. Make sure you have clean RODI water, fresh and ready, already made. I didn't think it was necessary to clean these buckets out from last time because you're just adding the same thing. Not sure if that's going to be an issue or not, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, if you need to follow the instructions, they are on Coralessentials website. They do give you the exact amount of ppm that you require for all of these 3 items, and tell you what you need to put in for your trace elements, how many mils your trace elements need. What's good about the Coralessentials trace elements is last time I used 10 mil. This is 100 mil. So every time that I use trace C, I'm only using 10 mil. Now I'm not too sure about on expiry dates. Doesn't say anything about refrigerating. So what I really like about the Coralessentials stuff is all of their instructions are online, really easy to follow. I'll drop a link down in the description for all the instructions, but also the trace A, B and C, I believe there is. Yeah, these 3. Trace A, B and C. Those 3 elements there. That's a mix of elements, but those 3 elements you don't use much of. They come in, I believe, a 50 ml bottle or a 100 ml bottle. But if you're wanting to save money, you're better off buying the 100 ml bottle because you don't use much every time you mix this up. So I've already used this last year. I'm going to reuse it again this year, and I don't believe there's any expiry date. Also, I've got boron to add, bromide to add, and potassium to add. I think the lowest one is the potassium, which that's fine. But all of these elements end up going into these three, and then that's your 3-part dosing for your reef tank. So it's pretty easy. I'll get into that now, and we'll get mixing one of these elements up. And I'll give you step-by-step instructions that you need to follow. If you're following along at home, it's really simple. If you're following along at home with the video, that's all good. If you need online instructions, you can just go onto Coral Essentials website. All right, so we'll mix calcium up first. As I mentioned previously, I've already bought these trace A and trace B elements. They're the elements you'll need for your calcium. If you wanted to dose these individually, you probably could. If you're chasing a certain parameter and you don't mind if the other ones go up, then yeah. It does actually say it contains RO. So this is for trace A. It's got RO water, strontium, barium chloride, and then proudly made in Australia. And the trace B is RO water, iron sulfate, zinc sulfate, copper sulfate, magnesium sulfate, chlorium chloride, cobalt sulfate, nickel sulfate, and then once again, proudly made in Australia. So these are the two you'll need, and your, what do we got? Calcium chloride powder in that blue bucket, and the container you want to mix your whole solution into. I was lucky enough to ask another reefer, actually the local fish store, Fantasy. They had, one of the guys there was dosing Coral Essentials, and he bought a 10-litre bucket just to try it out. You can buy these pre-mixed. This is a pre-mixed bucket. I just asked him if I could use his old buckets in case he was buying new ones. He said, yeah, sure, no worries. So it was lucky I got this bucket off of another reefer. Maybe join your local reefing page and ask if anyone's got these 10-litre buckets. If you're wanting to add a tap on these buckets, these 10-litre buckets too, they also have provisions for that. So you can add a tap. It'll also tell you daily dosing and stuff if you do want to just skip the mixing and just buy a bucket. It's not really a bucket, but it's a 10-litre bucket. We'll get into this. So I haven't mixed this Coral Essentials stuff up for a whole year, right? I need to add, at the beginning of mixing your calcium chloride in with your RODI water, do it on a tiled surface or a surface protected with a towel or something else that is not going to get affected by heat. The calcium chloride, when mixed with the RO, does produce lots and lots of heat. So that is completely normal. I completely remember now that I did this last time in the laundry and not in the living room where my reef tank is set up. But you need to remember, calcium mixed with the water creates heat. So do it on a tiled surface, even do it outside on the grass, something that's not going to affect anything. I've currently got mine just here on a towel, double folded over, and it's on hardwood floors, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. So now open up this blue bucket. The blue bucket purely contains calcium chloride powder ready to mix. So I'll take the lid off this and open this up. I believe they have a little opening tab. Yep, just there. Take that off. And then open the bucket. These are good buckets too if you go to like a reef stock or something, or a coral show. They do have handles on them, so you can put corals in there. But yeah. And this is your calcium powder. They're like little balls of calcium chloride, I think it was. And comes with a nice little, what do you call it? Velcro seal to seal it shut, sort of thing. So probably don't need the bucket anymore for this. So because these grains of calcium are very small, you will need a clean funnel. I also highly recommend you sort out a mixing head. I believe I just got this rod and mixer from Bunnings and just attached it to a Milwaukee drill that I got. But yeah, really helps with mixing. Make sure it can fit in the end of the bucket. If not, you can always cut it down and make it fit like I did. That's not an issue. As long as you have something to mix it, you can also just chuck the lid on and shake it around. I thought this might be easier. I didn't use that last time, so we'll see how it goes this time. It's a sort of a lazy reefer's way of just shaking the bucket up and mixing it that way, but we'll see if it works. I'll go grab a funnel now and we'll start mixing the calcium. So I found myself a funnel in the kitchen, made sure it was clean. Go steal your in-laws funnel if you don't have a funnel. Go steal your neighbour's funnel if you don't have a funnel, because it will make it easier. If you're mixing it in a 20 litre bucket, that's not an issue. So I'll just slowly tip this in now. But the way I like to pour this in is take the top of the bag and the corner, make a little hole in the corner of the bag, and then slowly just make sure that all of the calcium carbonate makes it down the funnel. Wasn't sure if I mentioned, but I've already put RO water in this, so I am putting the calcium into the RO water, not the other way around. So I'll keep going. The calcium does get hot and produce lots of heat. So I will now let the calcium cool down there and go on to the magnesium. All right guys, so while the calcium solution is cooling down after mixing, I'll jump onto the magnesium up by Coral Essentials. For this you will also need the Coral Power Potassium. Not too sure if you can see that. You'll need 2 buckets of water, of RODI water. Coral Essentials recommends putting 40% into this and 40% into this. That's because, whoa, that almost went flying. That's because when you open your magnesium bucket, when you find the easy way to open it, oh, there we go. You'll find you've actually got 2 different crystals. You've got magnesium chloride and magnesium sulfate. So Coral Essentials recommends you mix the chloride and the sulfate into 2 separate buckets and then mix the 2 solutions together. After it's mixed, I will then add the Coral Essentials potassium to the mix, and it'll go into this 10 litre bucket, same as all the other ones. If you mix your calcium up first, just a little tip, you will have a spare bucket to mix up your magnesium in. You can also try and probably mix it up in the magnesium bucket, but it is a little bit smaller than the calcium bucket. So just a little tip, if you need 2 buckets, you got 1 from your calcium. You can also just empty the calcium out and do that second, but you know, whatever. All right, so we'll get mixing on these. They have magnesium sulfate written on the bag and magnesium chloride. Don't believe it matters what one you mix into what. Like, you know, if I'm pouring magnesium sulfate into magnesium chloride, shouldn't really matter. So guys, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mix in the magnesium sulfate into the big bucket. I'm only gonna do that for the reason of that there's less to pour into this small hole. And I'm gonna put the magnesium chloride into the big bucket, so then I can just drop it in there and mix it up. I don't remember if there is any heat reaction that happens during this process. Make sure you get all your crystals. And into what's that, magnesium chloride into the bucket. I'll grab my trusty stirrer. I'll just give it a rinse under the water after I used it in the calcium, so we're not cross-contaminating products. So still no heat reaction with the magnesium chloride. I'm just going to mix it up now. Go very slowly so you don't splash it everywhere. But yeah, just make sure it's dissolving in. You pretty much just want to mix it all in till all the magnesium chloride crystals have dissolved and it becomes one solution, not crystals and water. Make it so it's fully diluted the crystals out. So once you stirred up your magnesium chloride, you'll have a clear liquid that'll be magnesium chloride and RODI water. Make sure once again, only use RODI water for this process, otherwise you may contaminate your dosing solutions. So we'll get started on the next solution. Alright, so now onto the second solution, which will be magnesium sulfate solution going into this bucket. I've already mixed the magnesium chloride and then we'll mix the two together. So, trusty funnel again. Thankfully there's not much of these crystals, so you should be alright to just turn the bag upside down and just shake it into your funnel. Make sure you completely empty your bag. I like to put it in upside down and just empty the bag that way. And then shake the funnel out, get all the crystals down into the bucket. Now grab the mixer again, put it onto the drill. As I mentioned earlier, if you don't have a drill and you didn't prepare and buy a mixer, just grab the bucket and shake it around. It'll dissolve eventually and turn into a solution, but this really helps. Now I've got both solutions diluted and mixed up. Magnesium chloride is in its own bucket here, and the magnesium sulfate is in here. I'm just now going to pour that magnesium chloride into the magnesium sulfate. So just slowly pouring one of the magnesium solutions into the other. Make sure you get every last drop. All right, perfect. Now, I'm gonna mix the magnesium solutions together. I'll mix this up now, and then we'll get to the potassium. The correct amount of potassium for the 10 litres is actually 20 milliliters. So I've got myself a syringe. It's a 5 milliliter syringe. If you have a 10 mil, that might work, but you just want to make sure that it actually will fit instead of using the droppers, or you can hold your finger over the end, fill the syringe, and then let go of it and it'll go into the container. Just do whatever's easiest for you. I find that the syringe is easiest to measure it out. If you have like a little measuring cup, like a medicine measuring cup, that'll also work. What are the chromists doing? So I roughly make these once a year. They last me once a year with the Softy reef tank. Doesn't really use much. Still looks beautiful. It also keeps your cost low if you just go softies and not SPS. That's high demand, high absorption rate of the trace elements and the main three elements: calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium. So 20 ml of this, 50 ml bottle. Use it twice. Don't think it's necessary, but if you do want to, just give it a shake. I don't believe it is necessary to do so. I just feel like that's what you should do with these things, is give it a shake, stir it up. Also, if you're doing any self-dosing on magnesium, potassium, all those trace elements, you can just add them straight to the tank. If you're doing ICP tests and your potassium is low, you could just use the dropper, go straight into the tank. But I dose it with the three main elements, and that's how I like to do it. So another little trick, if you can't fit your syringe into your potassium bottle, what I do is take out the top. You've now got a larger opening. And what you can do then is put your finger over the edge of the potassium and fill your syringe up to the 5 ml mark and just drop it in. So that's 5 ml. So now I'll do 10 ml, and this takes, to make 10 litres of your magnesium, it takes 20 ml of potassium to make it the same as the pre-mixed coralessentials solution. All right, so now out of this 50 ml bottle, I've only got 10 ml left. So that means next time I make this solution, I will have to buy a new potassium bottle. The magnesium's all mixed up. I don't think there's any reason. I only put 20 ml of the potassium in, but I don't think there's too much of a reason to get the drill out, whip it all around again. What I'll do is I'll chuck the lid on, go outside, and I'll just give it a bit of a shake before I tip it into a bottle. That's magnesium done. All right guys, so just finished off the magnesium. Now we're on to the alkalinity, or what Coral Essentials like to call it, is your carbonate up. Carbonate up is alkalinity up. The actual product is sodium carbonate, so that's why they call it carbonate up, not alkalinity up. It does raise your alkalinity. And then once we're done with this carbonate up, we'll mix the trace elements in it, and it'll be carbonate up plus trace elements, same as all three other products. For the trace elements, we've got trace C, boron, and bromide, and that uses 10 ml of those three elements for your 10 litres of alkalinity carbonate up, whatever you want to call it. So I've already put the 80% of level, 80% of RODI in here. Once again, nice easy bucket, get rid of that. Got your carbonate up, which is sodium carbonate powder, ready to mix. If you don't want to make the trace element side part, you can dose trace elements separately. But this is your carbonate, it's in a little bag. What I'm actually going to do is probably tip this powder into the bucket to make it easier to tip into the funnel. So I'm just putting it upside down, put the open end in the bucket, and just making sure I get it all out of the bag. Make sure nothing gets stuck. Just give it some shimmies of the bag. Alright, so just make sure you get all of it out. Just I have to sort of rub your hands together like you're pretending you're making fire, and that's that. So now we'll go back to our trusty funnel. I'll give that a wash from using it with the magnesium solution, and then we'll tip this into the RODI and then follow it with the trace elements. So I've just cleaned out the funnel from using it with the magnesium. I'll now put it in my bucket and slowly tip the sodium carbonate powder into the mix of water. Not of water, mix of water, it's just water. Should go nice and smooth. Make sure not to breathe any of the dust in that comes off it. It's probably not good for you. So that's the rest of that. That's the rest of the carbonate up mix in the funnel. Just like the calcium, the carbonate up does create a little bit of heat. You can feel it through the bottom of the container. It's not as much yet, but I will put it on the ground just to mix it up, as I don't want the kitchen table affected. I'll now drop this on the ground, give it a stir, let it cool off. Hopefully, by that time, we'll be able to put the calcium trace elements into the calcium and get that going again. Alright guys, so the carbonate up doesn't produce a lot of heat like the calcium up does, it's just warm. So what I'm going to do is stir this up and then add the trace elements to the mix, and then give it a stir while I've got the stirrer in there as well. So now that I've got that nice and stirred up, we'll add 10 ml of each of these trace elements to the 80% full solution. It's not 10 litres solution yet, so I'll just fill this up. Boron, we'll go give it a bit of shake, just as I said, not sure if it makes a difference, not sure if you need to. Alright, so gonna add 10 ml of boron, Coral Power boron. You'll be able to find that in most local fish stores near you, I believe globally. Coral Essentials is a global selling item, so even though it is an Australian made product, you'll be able to find it in America, Canada, anywhere. I'm located in Australia, so I've got no issues using this, and I know I'm going to be able to find it. So that's why I chose Coral Essentials. So 10 ml of the boron. So that's the first 5 ml. Now we'll add another 5 ml. Perfect. So that's 10 mil of boron added. We'll go on to the next trace element, and I believe shouldn't be an issue. You shouldn't have to wash this because you're going to mix them all together anyways. So as long as you're not cross-contaminating bottles, it'll be fine. So now we'll go on to trace C. We'll go 10 mil of this. That's probably 5.5 mil. So I'll just add 4.5 mil on the next one. That's about 4.5 mil. And I don't think it's going to be an issue if you overdose these items. As long as you're not putting 20 mil in when it says put 10 mil, you shouldn't have an issue with that. Now onto the bromide, 10 mil of bromide straight in as well.
All right guys, Happy New Year. It is actually the next year. So welcome to 2025 and Aussie Reefer Anton. I'm just going to continue on with the Coral Essentials stuff. I did actually end up putting the trace elements into the calcium after I let it cool down. So I've got the calcium, the carbonate or alkalinity, and the magnesium all mixed up. And I actually have them in the bottom of my tank in Voss bottles. So they're just hooked up to a 3-part doser. My 4th part is actually dosing vodka, which I've been doing for so long, it doesn't really matter anymore. It's just a bottle of vodka down there that I don't need to drink. But I just wanted to say Happy New Year's, and thank you for Coral Essentials for sending me out these buckets of the 3-part that I needed. You guys are awesome. I've also got they also sent me out these 3, the Grow, the Amino, and the CVE Plus. I'm really keen to try this, but I do actually have the CVE Plus in the black dropper bottles already. So I'm waiting, so I don't crack the seal on this one. I'm waiting until I run out of the dropper bottles. The dropper bottles have to be refrigerated, where I don't believe the CVE Plus can be refrigerated. It doesn't have to be. And you can add these to your 4th dosing head if you have a 4-part doser. But yeah, that's what I dose. That's the reef tank. Thanks for watching the video. Like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any comments, drop them in the comments. If there's anything you're confused about, I'm happy to answer in the comments. And I'll post Coral Essentials link in the description as well. Coral Essentials, huge thanks to them. They're awesome. If you're in Australia and you haven't tried Coral Essentials out, do it. I mean, I see colours in my reef tanks that don't normally exist, like if I don't dose Coral Essentials, and I think it's worth it. So cheers to that, and have a good one, guys.
I've been drinking water for some time, picking up the parts of